Welcome to Talking New York Real Estate with Vince Rocco. Our show is all about the exciting world of real estate and in particular, how it relates to the luxury New York marketplace. But if you are not planning a real estate transaction in New York, we still have plenty of information you can use no matter where you are. Now, here's our show. Good morning, everyone. New York City's powerful real estate trade association filed a lawsuit recently to block the FAIR Act from taking effect in mid-June. Just days after the Fairness in Apartment Rental Expenses Act became a law, the Real Estate Board of New York sued in Manhattan Federal Court to block it. The FAIR Act automatically entered into law on December 14th after Mayor Eric Adams declined to sign it within a 30-day window. The new law, introduced by City Council member Chayasi, requires that a landlord who hires a broker to market an apartment must pay their fee or risk facing civil penalties of up to $2,000. It also charges that the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection with informing New Yorkers about the FAIR Act through a public outreach campaign. Traditionally, New York City renters have paid broker fees of up to 10 to 15% of their annual rent, even if the landlord hired the broker. Some brokers have charged even higher fees on rent-stabilized units, which represent some of New York City's most affordable apartments. The FAIR Act flew through the City Council and passed with a veto-proof majority of 42 members in favor on November 13th. But REBNY mounted a significant opposition to the act and vowed to fight the legislation when it passed in November. And recently, REBNY kicked that fight into high gear. We're going to discuss all of that today. And at the table with me today are Jaron Anton, Managing Director of Elegant Forbes Global Properties, Jordan Silva from Brown Harris Stevens, and Louise Phillips Forbes, also from Brown Harris Stevens. They join me today to discuss. But first, let me welcome my listeners and viewers from across the United States and all around the globe. I am Vince Rocco, and this is Talking New York Real Estate. Grab your coffee, settle in as we go behind the headlines and uncover the real story, the state of our industry. And in the news this morning, New York State will proceed with congestion pricing as planned following a federal judge's ruling on New Jersey's lawsuit against the program. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority confirmed that the program will go into effect after a judge determined the state had met all necessary requirements to launch that plan. Congestion pricing will charge drivers entering Manhattan below 60th Street a $9 toll during peak hours, reduced from the originally planned $15 fee. Governor Hochul resumed the program in November after pausing it in June, just weeks before it was scheduled to begin. And there is a one-bedroom plus office co-op at 72 Horatio Street that feels like a sunny Scandinavian apartment with high ceilings and windows everywhere. Within a converted stable, historic details like exposed brick walls retain the loft vibe, and new renovations add an up-to-the-minute style. It is asking $2.998 million. The new updates are both cozy and luxurious, including white plank oak floors, recessed lighting, and designer chandeliers. And New York City welcomed nearly 65 million visitors in 2024, the second highest total in its history. Mayor Adams and New York City Tourism CEO Julie Coker last week announced a new end-of-year tourism forecast, revealing a 3.5% increase in visitors from 2023 and projecting a return to pre-pandemic levels in 25. New York City still remains the most visited largest city in the U.S. And finally, here was a chance to make the Swifties in your life very happy this past holiday season. Backed by popular demand, the New York City Department of Transportation was selling a limited quantity of authentic commemorative Cornelia Street signs as part of its monthly sign drops. The signs, which cost $75 and became available for purchase back in December, coincided with the pop star's birthday. Taylor Swift once rented a home on the Greenwich Village Street, which she name-dropped in her 2019 song, Cornelia Street. We got a lot to talk about, so let's get going.
Hi, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you know the right partner makes all the difference. At Roadway, we deliver an experience your clients will love. For specialized services and white glove care, choose Roadway. Want to learn more? Email me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
All right, everybody, we are here today. First show back in January 2025. I'm happy, and I'm hoping that you're all happy that we're back as well. We're going to talk today about, look, as I always say in this business, the only constant in real estate is change, okay? I say that probably every week, but we're going to talk today about the FAIR Act, which became law and doesn't go into effect here in New York City until June 11, 2025. But what we have to understand is that we should conduct business right now as usual. This is the rental law commission changes that we're going to talk about that are significant and could probably put, and this is my guesstimate, lots of rental agents out of business if it continues. So I've got the experts here to go through it all, explain to us all actually what it is, where it started, how it became, and then we're going to talk about why the Real Estate Board of New York, REBNY, has decided that they're going to sue the city council and try and reverse this. So let's get started. Jared, the REBNY lawsuit against the FAIR Act violates brokers' First Amendment rights to publish an open listing where multiple agents market an apartment on rental platforms according to court documents. StreetEasy already bans this type of post. What are your thoughts on this, and how can we easily explain this to our listeners and viewers today?
Sure. And thanks, Vince, for having me back. Let's first talk about what the FAIR Act is trying to do. I think it'll be important to define it. So the city council is basically, going on a big promotion that they've banned broker fees. Fundamentally, that's not entirely true. Just as the same as when the commission suits came down on the buy side, sellers were not all of a sudden no longer paying the buyer commission. So there is a misleading headline. And unfortunately, the city council is pushing forward a false narrative because it benefits the viewpoint that they want to have. The reality is broker fees aren't going away on sale or rental. What is happening is this bill is basically saying the party that is hiring the broker must be the one to pay that broker. So if I'm a landlord and I hire a broker, I have to pay that broker. Conventionally, because of the supply and demand and the market forces at work here in our free market, conventionally, many times a landlord was able to hire a broker and tenants would pay that broker fee. So under this new rule or law, if a landlord hires a broker, the landlord must pay that broker. A tenant has always been and is still free to hire a tenant representation agent, someone that's going to help them navigate the rental market, ensure they get the best deal. They're still able to do that, and the tenant would need to pay that agent.
But that's until June 11th, right?
It's correct. So
business as usual today. But once the act goes into effect, right, isn't it going to be against the law that we cannot, as tenant representative agents, get paid?
No. So if you represent today and if or when the law goes into effect as a tenant representation agent, you can still get paid by the tenant and you can also get paid by the landlord. But basically what is being prevented in this is very simply that a landlord's agent or a listing agent on a rental property could not take compensation from an incoming tenant. They would have to seek compensation from the landlord.
Okay. So, Jordan, in your estimation, what is the rationale then, based on what Jared just said? Why is REBNY taking such a hard and firm stance against this bill?
Well, I think they believe, as I do, that the bill is unconstitutional. Something similar was struck down in 2019. So there's an argument to be made that you are meddling in the free market here, and this is quickly becoming a top-down system where now a council, a far-off council, is dictating to you who pays what, where, when, and why, instead of two mutual individuals coming together for a transaction and deciding who pays what.
I mean, REBNY is calling it, actions against brokers' free speech.
Yeah, so there's three components that REBNY is challenging in their suit that was filed in federal court. So the first is they're saying that it's basically banning a certain type of commercial free speech, and commercial free speech is as protected as any other type of free speech. Correct. And it's basically saying that you can't advertise a certain type of property unless there's a certain commission structure in place. The second is it's going against the contracts clause, where it's invalidating existing contracts or existing agreements that are in place between a landlord's broker and a landlord, stating how that broker is going to be paid. Yep. So if this goes into effect, it would invalidate that, so it's breaking the contracts clause. The last of them is basically that the New York State Department of State, so at the state level, has put together a comprehensive set of rules and regulations governing real estate transactions. So the last argument in this is that the city council is out of their league or out of bounds to be able to create a separate set of rules that goes against or usurps what is already well established within the New York State Department of State governing real estate regulation.
What about advertising, Weezy? When tenants are out there looking for a place to live on the rental side, they they see a listing, usually now by the listing agent. Are they allowed to engage a tenant broker to work with or not?
It is my understanding that they can.
That's what Jared
It is
said.
my
That's
understanding that we can also be of service, which is what our business is,
Right.
to collaborate, again, at the request of those individuals. I think that the unintentional consequences and the self-interest of the individuals within the city council to look at building their own career, to propose that this is really for the people. It's not for the people. It is restricting and creates less transparency for the consumer in the long term, because the cause and effect of policies, the unintentional consequences that always occur, if you don't include the industry to collaborate with, then you can't see all sides of the issues to be considered.
What then, Jared, would be the allowable fee that a tenant can pay a rental agent? Has that been determined?
So
Because we talk about 10 to 15% of the annual rent in the past, which is pretty much standard, split 50-50. What then would become, landlord pays the listing agent, I'm working with you, representing you, trying to find a place. What then becomes the fee to me?
So importantly, commission's not set by any law, governing body, or any
Correct.
regulation, nor is commission being set by way of this rule change. What is being set is who is allowed to pay what. So a tenant's agent is allowed to ask for, charge whatever they deem appropriate for their services in representing a tenant. Similarly, a landlord's agent is free to charge whatever they deem appropriate for their services to a landlord. Now, what is important is, what do we think may change here? Because I would be hard-pressed to find a landlord that is going to be willing to pay a landlord's agent 12 to 15%, right? So if you think about what's going to happen as some of the flow and effects, if this goes into effect in June, there would be commission compression on the landlord side of the business, where brokers are going to need to, and also have the opportunity to elevate, change their offering, and those that are going to use this opportunity not to whine about it, but to do something about it. Again, assuming that this goes into effect, and if REBNY is not successful in challenging it, then there will be opportunity for landlord-focused agents to be able to rejigger their business model, where they would need to do more volume to make the same amount of money, but there would be opportunities to provide an elevated level of service to a landlord, take a portion of a month's rent instead of getting the 12 or 15% that has been fairly well documented. So there are opportunities to re-envision how you do things as a landlord's agent if this does go into effect. And as a tenant's agent, it also goes back to the importance in promoting quality and transparency. And a tenant's agent is automatically going to have more importance in some way if this goes into effect, because as we just talked about, there's going to be less visibility and less transparency in what properties are on the market. And we can talk about unintended consequences all day, but one of them is, I think there's going to be a two-level system where you're going to have those that can afford representation and find access to properties and good deals that are not on the market, and you're going to have those that can't afford tenant rep, and they're going to be forced into a smaller, different set of properties. So it's going to create this haves and have-nots, and whatever equality or fairness that is supposed to come out of this FAIR Act by saying we're going to reduce broker fees and reduce the cost is not going to go beyond that initial, sort of scratch the surface.
Well, let me ask a question. Okay, so it's similar to what's going on now with and we talked about it on our last show, the buyer broker agreement. So we're going to have a renter broker agreement. When we work with tenants.
Yeah, there will be new forms that are introduced. We don't really know what those look like exactly yet.
Okay.
But there will be, similar to how we have to have disclosure forms signed. But like you were saying, Jared, I think the saddest part about this is the people who are championing this the most and think that they're getting the most from it are actually getting the least from it. And they just don't have, a lot of folks don't have an education in macroeconomics, and that's okay. But I think politicians take advantage of those uneducated folks, and they know there's always more tenants than there are brokers. There's always more people who don't understand economics than people who do. Everybody wants immediate gratification. Nobody wants to think, oh, well, as complex as maybe our rents will rise because the landlord's going to bake in the fee. And they just want to think about the here, the now. And people, you see stories, somebody paid a $6,000 broker fee for a $2,000 apartment, and any normal, rational person goes, that's absurd. That shouldn't happen. But then when you really come down to it, the market dynamics allow for that to happen. So we're putting this Band-Aid on a broken leg, and the broken leg is housing affordability. And these politicians like Xi, and they do this, like you were saying, for their own benefits.
Self-interest.
And it's very easy to fool people into, something
somebody
like that.
that
Well, this was
like,
turned down in 2019.
Well, it was overturned.
Overturned.
Through a legal challenge, correct. So
Overturned,
we've
right.
been here before to some extent, and some of the material bases of the bill from a legal standing haven't changed. So I don't believe it's out of the question that, it could get overturned or rewritten, during this time as well.
Okay.
I was just going to say that I think that when you have an up-and-coming politician like the person that OSHA who sponsored this, I think that you're going to come to realize when somebody's so adamant and so passionate, but in an aggressive manner, there is an agenda that is not actually clear, and to not want to collaborate with the CEOs and the people of the industry, people like Bess Friedman and Pam Liebman, and not wanting to have conversations with them.
Well, of course they don't want to have conversations with them. They cheer when they get shot, So these are the same group of people that believe that CEOs, billionaires shouldn't exist, and believe that
look
agents
what the household
and
he
brokers
came from.
are,
So, yeah.
the oppressors, and the tenants are the oppressed, and they see everything in this matrix, and that's really what it
But
comes
this
down
passed with an overwhelming majority in the city council. I mean, overwhelming majority, okay? And one has to sit back and wonder, okay, so what are they thinking about? Jordan, you mentioned before, our biggest problem here is affordable housing, okay? Where is the focus on affordable housing? I mean, recently the mayor just came out with his something of yes.
City of yes.
City of
Yeah.
yes.
But,
I mean,
but
give
it's
me a
very, very
freaking
little.
Very,
It's
yeah.
very little and doesn't help anything. So what are people thinking about when it comes to affordable housing? And why are they focusing on, the rental agent or the rental business, where up until recently, tenants or people searching for rental properties were willing to pay a fee?
I think because it's immediate. People want that immediate. They think this sounds like a very simple fix, right? They're like, yes, actually getting to the long-term solutions of creating affordable housing takes years and years and years, and nobody's willing to wait for that. People just want what they can have in the immediate.
I will say
Immediate
that
gratification. I understand.
there are some interesting opportunities for purchasing that I don't quite understand why we don't have more of these in the rental, which are the income restrictions to be able to purchase. And they're all over the West Side. They're all over East Village. And trying to figure out how to come up with this balance of opportunities where fair market or not stabilized leases have the opportunity for people who have restricted income to be able to accomplish. And I that's part of what the mayor is trying to do.
That's correct.
But again, it's
And we haven't restarted another 421A. A lot of the new rental buildings, had an 80-20 where there were, 20% of the units reserved for, moderate income. The problem comes down to just supply and demand, right? So very few other markets have any sort of thing where tenants pay the broker fee. Why? Because there's not, a sub 1.5 or sub 2% broker fee. There's more supply, and they're building a ton of new inventory, which is able to be released on the market and has these, in-house leasing offices, right? We do have a number of large buildings here that have in-house leasing offices where someone can walk in off the street, but they tend to be more expensive. We don't have a lot of quote unquote affordable housing stock that is not represented by a broker, because these are smaller, more mom and pop landlords that don't have the budget or the wherewithal or the desire to handle their marketing and rental pieces. So we fundamentally have a different environment here. And because New York City is a desirable place to live, because people often forget 70% of our housing stock here is for rent, not for sale, we are a city of renters, and we have a lot of demand and not a ton of supply. In 2020, 2021, during the early days of COVID, there were OPs and no broker fees everywhere because
And
people
3
didn't want
months
to
of
be here.
rent.
And
3 months
I
of
mean,
rent.
my landlords had 40% vacancy.
Yep.
Correct.
And so they were giving 3 months. They were doing 15% of a year's lease. They were doing what the market
Bingo.
demanded of them.
Bingo.
Yeah, the top-down council will never be able to act as quickly and appropriately as the market forces. Like in COVID, like
Right.
you're saying,
We can't
yeah.
make up the market.
Yeah.
The market is how we respond to it. And I advise my clients, like, you got to pay the fee, when they need to pay the fee. And so, again, in a stronger market, when the rents can go up, they will go up even more. I just don't understand that there's blinders on
Yeah.
for the policy.
yeah.
All right, we have to take a break. On the other side of the break, when we come back, we're going to talk about the industry reaction to this law and its lawsuit, and more importantly, public perception of the renters out there and anybody else who runs around New York City and has real estate needs. We're coming right back after this. Don't go anywhere. This is Talking New York Real Estate on the More Network. We're coming right back.
The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
All right, everybody, we are back. I just wanted to get back into the conversation, what the industry reaction has been to the FAR Act, and more importantly, what it's been with the Repney lawsuit, and also customer renter perception out there. Louise, you were just mentioning something during the break. So what is the industry reaction, brokers and managers and companies as a whole? What is the reaction in general to this act, where we are and where we may end up with?
I think that I think that we have worked hard aligning ourselves in companies that have leadership for demanding ethics and quality and good business practices, that I think that we feel, I don't think it's really, I'm not focused on the money I'm not going to make. I'm focused on the lack of why this is a solution.
Right.
I'm focused because I will be successful in whatever I do because I'm of service and I do what I say I'm going to do, and I, all the things.
And you're wheezy.
But I
down.
think the industry is sick and tired of not being heard and not being participated in these decisions that are the unintentional consequences are massive. Look at the change in the rental law that took place in 2019. There are 20,000 pieces of property not in the market
maybe
as
more.
a
Yeah,
result
more, yeah.
to the law, and that was unintentional. And there are people that were in the right place at the right time, and thousands of them that could have benefited from a conversion in a building that they were in a rent stabilized or rent controlled, that they could have monetized themselves or purchased their home. So I think that we're outraged and disappointed yet again that policies are made on the pocketbook as opposed to the immediate gratification of the pocketbook, because that's what they believe that perception is. It's not actually the solution.
Comment?
So it's our industry's problem, and we need to also bind together to solve it, right? So I look at this, I look at the buyer broker commission piece. If you didn't watch the previous episode, definitely go back and watch it. But these are wake-up calls for the industry. And we have some really, really good, ethical, well-intentioned, hardworking, client-centric brokers, and we have a lot of really crappy ones. And the problem is the crappy ones make a lot of noise, and they create a horrible reputation that poisons the industry. So we have a lot of bad actors, and this is the moment that the good actors need to rise up and say, you know what, we're going to seize the day, we're going to take this opportunity, we're going to take the hand that we're dealt, no matter what hand it is, and we're going to do better, and we're going to do more, and we're going to do different, and we're going to make sure that we continue to promoting client centricity, clients, focused, that we're going to create that transparency and we're going to create the communication. And the problem is it makes it hard for a good agent to do their job well when you have a lot of bad agents that are cheating, shortcutting, not following the rules, or just not giving a crap about their clients.
It also, it makes it
You've
harder.
taken my, you should take my continuing ed classes. I know, I hear you.
It makes it harder for a good agent to do well when an act is passed that doesn't allow them to get paid a certain amount. That, if you're telling a good agent, we want you to do better, and you're going to get paid half. Who's going to do that? Nobody's going to do that.
Well,
in my opinion.
That's exactly that. To me,
And
is a major problem
it
on
doesn't-
both the buy side and on the rental side.
And it doesn't foster collaboration either, most importantly.
So
Most definitely.
this is taking the market backwards. This, and to some extent, some of the things happening with clear cooperation is moving the market backwards if clear cooperation goes away. Because what is happening is we've worked for 25, 30 years to get everything on a central listing service where there's clear transparency, clear visibility, and it breaks down the equality for access to information, right? But if we move into this multi-tiered situation, if clear cooperation goes away, if properties aren't listed in the free way that they are today on the rental side, again, you have the haves and the have-nots. There's not clear, simple, all-encompassing access to information, which is going to make things unfair and also creates its own sort of fair housing issues, that come from that.
But that's my point. We're getting to a situation where we're not even going to be able to have access to the information that we need to get our jobs done properly, or to service our clients, or take care of our clients. Jordan, you work with a lot of rental folk out there like I do. What is the perception? Now, and I say this because we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago on the buy side, okay? Once you tell a buyer or they read in the press you don't have to pay a commission anymore,
Sure.
they ain't going to pay a commission, okay?
Yep.
Period. That's it, done. Same thing on the rental side. I'm already hearing, and I have been hearing, I don't have to pay a rental commission anymore. I can go directly to the listing agent. I don't need anybody to help me out. I'm not going to do it. What are you
What's
hearing?
the argument?
What's the argument? I mean, how do
Yeah.
you go back and say, well,
because of an act like this, it will disincentivize someone like you, someone like me, who has expertise in the rental market, not to work with renters. I've already felt, based on that type of pushback, I'm representing landlords. I have a portfolio. I have another agent show the listing. He collects a fee. I collect a fee. And I don't have to hear the renters, their qualms about a broker fee. So they are still paying broker fees. I have buildings, Upper East Side, downtown. Again, it depends. Is it priced properly? Is it priced with the fee in consideration? If so, people will pay it. And I do think that when that option is taken away, because that's what this does. This removes options.
Yep.
It completely removes options is all this is doing. So when the option for somebody to pay the upfront fee is removed, 100% the landlord is going to increase their rents. So I'm kind of looking forward to, if and when this bill passes, that moment when we see rents increase 20%.
do you think that's going to
overnight.
happen? Because there's a big
100%.
controversy out there. People say, yes, they will increase rents, and some people
I'm
say,
not sure it's going to
no,
go
they're not.
20%, but
I don't know. Is it?
I
In
think
June.
Well, so I'm going to say 3 points. So one, just to accentuate a point Jordan just made. Fundamentally, tenants can go and rent an apartment right now without paying a broker fee.
Sure.
It takes a little bit of work, elbow grease, and
Right.
a lot of strong will, but you can do it because the properties are generally listed and publicly available. StreetEasy has done a very good job in promoting data, integrity and data cleanliness from rental listings. So you can do it. But to Jordan's point, if this goes into effect in June, that ability is significantly handcuffed or handicapped. So by nature, what a tenant would have been able to do for quote unquote free or no cost, they will now have to pay because rents will go up. The question of how much is to be determined, but I've performed analyses over my tenure in the business, always comparing OP properties with tenant paid. And every time
They're
an
higher.
OP property is more, a no fee property. Now, the importance is a landlord's goal and a tenant's goal are aligned. A landlord's goal, very simply, is they want to make the most amount of money from a tenant during the tenant's tenancy as possible. And a tenant wants to minimize the amount of money that they need to pay to move into that property. They're aligned. Now, here's where the rubber meets the road. If a tenant only spends 1 year in the property, they're usually better off getting a no fee and paying a higher rent. But we all know that people generally spend 2 or 3 years on average in the rental property. So in that case, if they're going to spend more than a year, so if they're going to spend 2 or more, they're generally then better off paying
To
the fee
amortize
up front
the fee.
and to not have to pay that higher rent. So one argument with this is, if this goes into effect, then people will feel like they can move more freely because they won't have to worry about paying another broker fee, and it's so expensive to move, and people are staying in their properties longer because of the cost of the broker fee. So to what extent is the broker fee being the same lockup effect that someone having a 2.8% interest rate is having today? We can adjudicate that and argue that. But fundamentally, I think that rents will go up by about 8 to 9%. So I think that landlords won't necessarily pay won't necessarily pay the 12 or 15%. I think that they'll pay some portion of a month. Was it 2/3? Is it 3/4? Are they going to pay a full month? But I think landlords are going to try to increase the rents and use this as an option to squeeze more out. Forget about just covering the broker fee, but also to increase rents a bit more now as well,
Right.
for their profit margin.
Because so many of these landlords have debt that's on this. They're
Bingo.
leveraged, and the higher the rent is, the better it is for their debt service
Yeah.
and for their future leverage.
Exactly.
So that is why you see all this like 13-month lease with this much, and it's some calculation that nobody can figure out what it
Yeah.
means. And I think that is going to make it muddier.
That's such an important point, because all a landlord wants is to show the highest gross rent. They don't necessarily care about
Right.
what one-time deductions or write-offs or OPs or things like that are on there. They care about what the highest rent row is, because that's how the building's valued. That's how they can leverage, and that's how they can refi and take cash out. So to some extent, this is actually beneficial for landlords because it's giving them what they want, which is getting that higher rent roll and
Yep.
keeping the clients in there. But that's where it's going to create some creativity between a agent, a landlord rep agent, and
Yep.
the landlord.
And no different than on the buy side, where buildings really are concerned about the integrity of a sale price, right? Because they don't want that to be degraded, because then the next sale that comes up and the next sale that comes up,
Yep.
it's going to be a problem. Quick question.
Yeah.
Why did Mayor Eric Adams choose not to sign this act within the 30-day window that he had? Does anybody know that? Because I couldn't find an answer
He
to
was
that.
making a statement.
He
But-
thinks that this is a bad. It's a pocketbook,
Got it.
immediate gratification, not a long-term solution. And
But he had no power to change it.
Well, it was a veto-proof majority because
Right.
of the
Because
amount
of
that
the
was voted.
amount
So a
of-
veto would have been fruitless, and by him putting his signature on, he would have endorsed it. By him not doing anything, he was able to say, I can't veto
control
it,
it,
but I'm
Yeah.
not signing
But I'm
off
not
on
supporting
Exactly.
it. And I think that was a good political position because it's speaking somebody's truth. What I was going to say when you were talking is, you probably weren't even born, but when I was first in real estate, I don't know if anybody remembers the rent-controlled key money. The fixture fee. I mean, people were moving into rent-controlled apartments and paying $250,000 for somebody's improvement of a rent-controlled apartment.
Okay.
I just think that we are fostering backhand deals.
Yep.
Same with what happened where landlords used to be incentivized for improving an apartment. Somebody lived in an apartment for 45 years, and you can put $100,000 to improve that apartment, and they get, 20 cents to every dollar. They get to elevate the rent. And now they don't get that. So what these unintentional consequences for policies are going to continue de-incentivizing. I mean, like a lot of our multi-generational landlords and real estate families are buying across the country in other places in more friendly states because who needs it?
It's because a lot of these politicians are not thinking about incentives, and they're not thinking about market forces. They are thinking about oppressed and oppressor. And to them, the big bad real estate industry is the oppressor, and the poor tenants are the oppressed. And any bill that they can pass that makes it appear like they are helping the working class is a positive to them. And they just see the world in this different oppressor matrix. And unfortunately, anything they can do, they don't care about lifting them up. They care about pushing us down because we are, the oppressors. So I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day, is that they believe that the government can create a better top-down system for the people who are struggling at the bottom the most than market forces can.
Good luck with that. Jared, but I agree with you. What are the potential implications if the Fair Act is blocked or overturned by the courts? I mean, is there a possibility that it can be overturned again?
Anything is possible. I mean, if it does get overturned, then we stick with this business as usual where the market forces drive. I still think that there is value for innovation to happen in this market, for brokers to use this as a wake-up call to understand how we can't be greedy. I'm not saying we shouldn't get paid what we deserve, but there's a fine line between what you deserve and being greedy when it comes to this, and what are we doing to making sure that we're doing right by the landlord. So no matter what happens, again, this is—
And right by the tenant.
100% correct.
But
I don't think you can be greedy. I think you're paid what the other party believes you're worth. So I don't even think that there is a greed.
Unless the government's defining what that is.
Right.
You know what I
Correct.
mean?
Arguably, there's been some quote unquote greed when you look at those rent stabilized things. Nowhere near, the $250,000 key money, but there's been some articles talking about, 25, 30% broker fees for these rent stabilized. And
But those are such small cases. Right?
Correct.
That's one in a million.
It's still, it's the behavior that the behavior, the unintentional consequences have caused the opportunity for what I believe is who you know and how you can get and benefits from this lower, and you're paying somebody to benefit on it. I don't think that's right.
bingo. And back to the perception, those isolated instances that I agree are very, very far and few between, but are magnified in the press, are what our city council then sees and takes and grabs and runs with as this is a horror.
Outrage,
an
although
outrage,
it's less
exactly.
than 1% of.
Correct. And even if they're paying that fee, they're saving a ton of money on a way, way, way below market rent.
It's true. And you can't create this policy with these cherry-picked cases, and that's what
Correct.
they're doing, which is so frustrating.
Right.
And I can't even blame that. I saw poor guy, some young guy who had this rent stabilized apartment who thought he was really going to clean up, and then he's just plastered all over the Real Deal.
I
just
cringe when I
everyone's
see those
back.
Oh, I
headlines.
don't even know. I don't even know about that.
I almost, I don't know this guy, but hey, he collected a $20,000 fee for it was probably a ridiculously good deal. If somebody's out there who will pay it because of a rent stabilized system that was created by a government,
Right.
that's it's how can we introduce more
How does
regulation
his landlord
to fix
feel
the
about that?
regulation?
But unfortunately, the landlord is legally unable to collect more, and I wonder if there was a kickback. Not saying there was, just
Sometimes
Well,
there is,
but you have to wonder these things.
Yeah.
So, talking about perception that we talked about before, right? How are our relationships going to be affected? Brokers, landlords, tenants, everybody involved. Because, as I said before, the word out there is I don't have to pay a fee. I don't have to do anything. I can go rent an apartment, and the landlord's going to pay. So, relationships that we've had with our rental clients, right? Similar to on the buy side. How is our relationship going to be affected overall, long term, if the act stays in place?
we have to redefine it. I would argue till I'm blue in the face that there is value for a tenant that has more money than time to use a good tenants agent to help
Yep,
them navigate,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
If you have all the time in the world and money is your limiting factor, then you could do it on your own with, some due diligence and some care. But if time is your limiting resource, then you want to pay a couple bucks to be able to get the right person to represent you. So again, it's about reinstating or reaffirming our value add in showing
Absolutely.
up better, smarter, wiser, and more nimble for our clients.
If we have the opportunity for those buyers to come to us and ask us for representation, right? But again, I keep going back to that perception saying, hey, I'm going to search on my own. I'm going to go directly. I mean, we have direct deals anyway on either side of the fence, buyer or rental. My concern is, you're right, Jared, but how are we going to get these people to consider us or to think about us where we can then sell them on our benefit of being a service provider, of making sure that everything is correct before you embark upon a rental deal or signing of a lease? I'm not sure.
I think the rental business has already become so restrictive that at this point, I would only work with a renter at a certain budget, or if they were a friend or somebody who I knew that said, I will 100% be loyal to you, I only want to work with you, and you will get paid. That's the only way that I'll work with a renter at this point, because it's become so difficult. And I think an act like this is only going to make it more difficult. And tenant representation, there's just not that much. I think there's a ceiling, right? It's
Right.
kind of
For
the
sure.
starter. I
It's-
rented over 700 apartments in my first 7 years of doing this, but there comes a point where
I'm sorry.
you get tired. Yeah, no, I'm tired. So I'm honestly, the attack on the rental agent and the perception that we're being greedy or that we're not good at what we do, I don't need to be involved in that. So I'm happy to use my resources and my time and dedicate it towards
Differently.
the sales industry
For sure.
and only focus on that, or focus on my landlord portfolio. And I'm not going to focus on tenants because bills like this are passing. So they're
Yeah.
going to get less service.
See, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think people are going to take their focus off of the rental business and more into the buyer and seller business,
Yeah.
where we also have some issues that we've talked about a couple of weeks ago.
But I think, sorry.
No, for myself, I will just say that, I built my business on a referral base, and I will do, for somebody that sold $6 billion in sales, I will still take I am in contract on an apartment for $295,000. I just want to say out loud,
Congrats.
which is kind of amazing.
You can go lower.
I can go lower,
you certainly can.
but the rental, I get family members and long-term clients that are, want my help for a $2,000 for their
Yes,
aunts, cousins.
absolutely.
And honestly, I will take the time and I will say, here are the 3 places you should look. Call me if you need help. I don't, that is going to continue to be in my DNA.
It won't change that. Yeah.
That's not going to change it, but I will be much more. I won't be able to give that support because there won't be the same transparency, and the people that are bottom feeding on those are not the people that operate with an ethical manner. And I don't want to. I shouldn't generalize it like that, but that is where that is going to be.
So Weezy is going to appreciate this, because what we haven't talked about is what happens to owners of condo properties that rent them out. Right. So we've talked a lot about, landlords of small or medium or large size rental buildings that own a portfolio. But what about your, individual investor that owns 1, 2, or 3 condo properties? So fundamentally in condos, generally speaking, the tenant has paid the broker fee, right? And a landlord has offset that. So now if a landlord is going to have to pay that fee, and there's a lot more work that goes into being a listing agent for a condo than a rental building when you factor in the board package, especially if you're doing a co-op. So, how is that changing the yield and the analysis for condos? What does that do for the sales market then for condo properties and for investors, right? It's hard-pressed to make a case that it's a good time to be an investor in New York. I believe now is a good time to buy if you're an end user or you want a pied-à-terre. But fundamentally, from an investment perspective, it's very, very tough in New York. And this is another thing that's going to depress or hinder that cap rate. And I've been having conversations with my institutional landlords, my mom-and-pop landlords, and my individual owners of condo properties over the last couple of weeks, educating them of what's happened. The conversation's a little bit different. And some have been saying, is this now time for me to sell my condo or my co-op? Because it changes the calculus. And, you can get a 7, 8, 10% cash on cash return in some other markets, and you're lucky to get 3.5
on a good day.
On a good day,
On a
here.
good day.
And now
really
if you're
good
going to take 8% out of your rent roll, and potentially reduce your ROI by that much, it makes the calculus that much more different or difficult. You have rising taxes, rising common charges. So it's going to change the supply and demand too on the rental market.
All right, we have to take a quick break. Coming right back. Don't go anywhere. This is Talking New York Real Estate. We're coming right back.
This podcast is supported by the More Network, powered by Brown Harris Stevens. Real estate touches every aspect of our lives, from design and architecture to investing and the economy. Now there's a way to get all your real estate information in one place. The More Network. With more than 20 podcast and webcast series, the Mastery of Real Estate Network is powered by Brown Harris Stevens, one of the country's most distinguished brokerages. Discover advice from notable entrepreneurs, compelling topics, and access to top global real estate experts. Subscribe to their YouTube and Apple podcast channels by visiting getmorenetwork.com.
All right, we are back. So, we talked about a whole bunch of things, but, some of the what happens, okay? What happens if a landlord says, no, I'm not paying the fee? I don't want to pay the fee. What do we do? The law says he can get fined or fined $2,000 or whatever. What a landlord says, I don't want to. A condo owner or a landlord in a bigger building. That's going to happen. How do we get around that?
I think it becomes an open listing, right? Wouldn't they say, let's make this an open listing? And
well, here's
how do you list it as an open listing?
The landlord would have to market it themselves is the short answer. They wouldn't be, unless based upon the letter of the law, unless the broker is willing to risk the civil penalty, a broker would not be able to take the listing unless they have a signed listed agreement where the landlord is offering some sort of compensation, or the broker can do it for free. But otherwise, the landlord would need to do it themselves because in the bill.
Wait, how could the broker do it for free?
Well, just fundamentally not get paid.
It.
I wouldn't suggest it to do it, but they fundamentally could. It's within their human rights to do it.
Hey,
until the city council passes a bill that says brokers can't work for free, they still can. We shouldn't, but you can. But there's this presumed assumption that if you're marketing a property, that you were doing it on behalf of the landlord, and as a result, if you're marketing it, you have to be paid by the party in which you're marketing it up. So the open listings are called into question here anyway, because if you're advertising it, that presumption clause is that, well, you're presumed to be representing the landlord if you're marketing the property.
Interesting.
What happens with, the conversation as we touched on a little while ago, rents go up. How much are they going to go up by? I think you said 7% potentially? 8%?
Yeah,
I think it'll be much higher because it's in June. So I think we're going to look at rents and compare rents to the season before.
Right.
And it's going to look like a 20% increase. And then that's when we'll get to say, told you.
Yes, but you also have to remember that as interest rates go up, we have the marker, when interest rates go up, rent goes up. And when interest rates drop, rent drops and the supply and demand, and those first-time buyers come back into the market. So you're factoring the rental market with that sort of surge of 11 interest rate rises, because that's still kind of domino.
And it gets so busy during the summer. That's the thing. Rents typically do increase around that time. I've been seeing them naturally ease, actually. And I have listings where we're decreasing prices. Landlords are incentivizing fees and they're paying fees just naturally because guess what? It's the market cycle.
Right.
We're in January. So you have to flow with the market forces. And when we try and manipulate these forces, it doesn't usually end up working out, and that's the sad truth. And people think that it will benefit them, and it just won't.
Talk a little bit about the city council member Chiasi, however you say his name, who championed this back in 2019, has done it again in 2024. Gen Z, 24 years old. What does he know about anything, quite frankly? And I think everybody out there knows that I'm not a fan, of him. So carry on.
I am Chi Ose's biggest fan. We've never met, but when I made a TikTok about the FAIR Act, he stitched it. And and that was our introduction, was him basically trying to, do a slam dunk gotcha on my, reasons why this broker fee bill is not good for the tenants. And of course, then his stitch went super viral and got, I got a lot of hate and anti-Semitic comments. This all happened, at the perfect storm, at the perfect time, and so that was my introduction to Councilmember Chi. So then I did a little more research on him, and it turns out he's 24 years old. His dad is a famous entertainment lawyer. He grew up in a
silver spoon.
$4 million brownstone, and he pretends like he's one with the people. He acts like he understands the people's struggle, and people fall for it, is the saddest part. And he is the reason why this bill has become so culturally relevant and so popular because he is a great face of the bill. He put a face to the bill. He is the face of the bill. He has a great face. He's a handsome guy. He's well-spoken.
He absolutely is.
He's a great face to the bill. But I think when you look a little
When you
deeper,
dive in.
you see that he is
But
more
who
interested in
dives-
likes
but
and
who
comments.
dives in? Who
No
dives
one,
in?
no one. They just see his videos, and he has engaging videos.
Buy
He's-
his T-shirts.
yeah, he has T-shirts that
T-shirt.
say "fuck broker fees." Can I say
Absolutely.
that word on here? He has these
Please.
Just
T-shirts.
did
That, I was thinking about buying them just as a joke and maybe wearing it out sometime.
YouTube might have a problem with that.
If anybody's buying these shirts that say "fuck broker fees," like you seriously need to reconsider your priorities in life. Like something's
There's
a little
something
wrong
else going
there.
on in the world around us
Yeah.
more important than that.
But he is the perfect face for a bill like this, and I think that's the reason why this bill gained so much popularity. He has incredible connections to press because of his dad, because he's a nepo baby. So this is somebody that really is using his power, and I think he might really believe in this stuff. You know, there is a younger generation out there that really does believe in this matrix. Like I was telling you, that there's the good and the bad. It's very black and white, and business is bad, and tenants are good, and we can create very simple legislation to help those in need.
I wonder if he's
we all wanna help
rented
those in need.
any apartments, without connections.
So he did that. That's how he came to this bill, is because he rented his first apartments and he thought, this is ridiculous. These broker fees are insane. And that's how this bill.
And as my dad used to say, and I grew up hearing it over and over again, you haven't walked the earth long enough to know what the hell you're talking about, okay?
But
Walk
again,
the earth long enough and you'll learn.
and he has, like many do, aspirations of more. So there's the ability to use this bill as something that plays very well in the sound bites, because again, most people just look at the headlines. I'm
Yep.
still waiting for grocery prices to come down. Will
Right.
they? I've been told that it's hard to bring them down once they're up. But this bill plays into the hand of being able to facilitate his aspirations of, additional higher positions. However, it's important to understand, as we've been talking about, what happens, what's the flow and effect, right? So it can sound really, really good, but if you can't back it up, it's all the sizzle, no pop. Is that the right saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so tell me, Jared, who wins, who loses if this FAIR Act actually does go into effect starting January 11th, 2025, which is only 6 months from now? Well, court, fights are lost. What happens? Who wins?
So landlords win because they can raise their rents. They can have their rent rolls look better for the banks and for the underwriter. Landlord agents lose because there'll be a compression on the commission that
Yep.
they'll charge. And tenants, it's a toss-up. My honest belief is in most cases they're going to lose because they're going to end up paying more. It's going to be harder for them to navigate. And they're going to need to use a tenants broker, and many times more than they would otherwise. But some tenants may be able to navigate, move more freely, move more often without feeling beholden to paying that broker fee. So there are some tenants that may very well win. I think a lot of tenants won't understand the true cost that this does cost them, and landlords are going to win unintended consequences.
Wheezy,
Yep.
thoughts?
I'm going to echo that. I see the opportunity for the landlords, and honestly, it's very difficult to be a landlord in New York City. It is a pro-tenant policy. You can't. I have people that landlords who have not been able to evict non-payers since COVID,
Yeah,
which is just wrong.
yeah.
And so I'm in agreement with Jared.
I got to caveat one thing I say. Landlords of rental buildings where they have, 20 plus units will win. Landlords of a small portfolio of a single
Yeah.
condos, they're going to lose because they're not going to have the same pricing power to increase the rents.
Absolutely.
So landlords of individual units, I believe, will lose under this.
Louise, what about rental developments and conversions of buildings? How do these new laws potentially affect those?
Well, if you remember the law that was on June 19th, 2019, where the policy, and I'm even forgetting what it was called. What was that called?
Tenant Rental Protection Act.
The
Tenant Protection Act, TPA.
TPA. What that had baked into it was that buildings that used to be able to have the luxury owners who own buildings, multi-generational, who, if they wanted to choose to convert the building to a co-op or a condo, no longer really had that choice unless they could sell 51%. They did give an extension of 3 more months, but when you're selling a building, which I've just done at 393 West End Avenue, which is the last conversion probably in the pipeline, you can't accomplish 51% because the tenant association will challenge it or the timeline you don't have to be successful.
Jordan, thoughts?
Who wins, who loses?
Who wins, who loses, where we all go with this? You, again, represent a lot of rentals. What's the rub?
Well, I won't be very much longer. I'm happy to close that book of business and
As you said before,
focusing on a new chapter. But
Right.
From my experience of working in rentals for the past 8-9 years, I think everyone loses. I think for landlords, they don't care based on the landlords I've talked to. They just don't care. But I think
Especially if they're big landlords.
Sure, but I think the
And
agents,
they're going to rent anyway, somehow, some
they'll
way,
figure it out.
whatever.
But
Yeah.
the agents, certainly, it's just going to make things more difficult for agents and tenants. It's going to make things, the biggest losers are going to be the tenants who are struggling the most, and the only winner is Councilmember Chi. He really gets to have those headlines where he looks like he is this savior of the city. And in reality, he's doing more harm than good.
And you want to be hated by an entire industry? Is
He
that
does.
what makes him feel good?
He does. Well, in 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene does discuss how the importance of an enemy, and yes, so I think the real estate industry, brokers, agents, rental agents are his enemy. And you know what? It's a really easy target, and he's really punching down on this when he's acting like it's punching up. He was doing videos with Ilana Glazer, who I think is just not funny. I never liked her show. Do you know that show?
No.
Ilana
I don't
Glazer.
either.
She did some, I don't know, people love her TV show, and they did videos together, and he was doing videos with all these celebrities.
I wonder how he got those celebrities.
Exactly, right, exactly, yeah, exactly.
Entertainment attorney.
But he's
But he
acting
won't
like
appear on
this
this
is,
show. Isn't that something?
Did you ask him?
Absolutely, multiple times.
He's acting like this is a punch up when it's really a punch down. I think these are a lot of small business owners. A lot of these rental agents are earning $60,000, $80,000 a year, and he is acting like it's the people versus the big real estate industry. And he gets to create this narrative, be at the center of this narrative, take up space, take up air, when we should be discussing much more important, much more pressing matters and how to
Absolutely.
actually create solutions.
Increasing supply. We need
Yeah.
more.
Increasing supply, understanding what the market conditions are today, understanding how we can better work with and negotiate with tenants and buyers in some cases. These are the important pressing things that we as agents are concerned with.
Absolutely.
We don't need all the noise,
Right.
as you said before, and all of these rules and regulation changes that really don't, in my opinion, benefit anybody. Great conversation, good show. Coming right back with my thoughts for the week. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you know the right partner makes all the difference. At Roadway, we deliver an experience your clients will love. For specialized services and white glove care, choose Roadway. Want to learn more? Email me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
All right, everybody, we're back with my closing thoughts for the week. So rent control laws designed to protect tenants from rapidly increasing housing costs have complex implications for housing supply and affordability. On the one hand, these laws offer immediate financial relief to tenants by capping rents, making housing more accessible for low and middle income residents in expensive markets. However, they can also discourage new housing development and investment in rental properties as landlords face reduced profitability and limited incentives to maintain or even upgrade their units. Over time, this can lead to a decline in the quality of existing rental housing and a constrained housing supply, exacerbating affordability challenges for those not covered by rent controls. Additionally, critics argue that rent control may create inefficiencies in the market, such as reduced mobility for tenants who stay in controlled units even when their housing needs change. While rent control provides short-term affordability for some, addressing broader housing shortages and fostering equitable solutions require a balanced approach that includes increased housing production and targeted subsidies. And that's our broadcast for today. Thanks to my guests for being here on set with me. Always appreciate it. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, or TikTok at Vince Rocco. And as Norman Vincent Peale says, and I love it. Shoot for the moon, everyone. Even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. And from all of us here at Talking New York Real Estate and the More Network, to all of you all around the world, thanks for spending a part of your day with us. I am grateful, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.